Some lies are told to survive, some are told to protect, and some, God help you, are told because the truth would have been too much to hope for. She was Lagos's most celebrated wedding planner. She had designed 312 weddings. She had never cried at a single one. Not from joy, not from beauty, not from the 1,000 moments of human tenderness that unfolded inside the ceremonies she built like architecture. Tonight, standing in the glass-walled rooftop of the Echo Atlantic Ballroom, her greatest event, her masterpiece, the wedding that was supposed to launch her company into West Africa's top tier, Adedese Okafor was 3 seconds away from kissing a complete stranger. His hand was on her waist, his mouth was inches from hers, and across the ballroom, her ex-fiancé, the man who had ended their engagement 6 months ago and then had the specific cruelty to hire her company to plan his wedding to someone else, was watching. "Trust me," the stranger said. His voice was low, Korean accented, and impossibly calm for a man whose lips were a breath from hers. "I've got you." She had 30 seconds to decide, 30 seconds before everything changed. The Echo Atlantic rooftop was a fever dream of white orchids and candlelight. Adedese had designed it herself, every table placement, every lighting angle, every inch of the floral cascade that swept from the ceiling like a waterfall caught mid-fall. 6 months of work, her biggest contract, the wedding of Emeka Nwosu, tech billionaire, Lagos darling, the man who had once told Adedese she was the love of his life, to Fatima Al-Hassan, daughter of a northern oil family, 26 years old, breathtakingly beautiful, and entirely unaware that the woman running her wedding had once worn Emeka's ring. Adedese knew. She had known when she took the contract. She had taken it anyway because she was a professional, because the money was significant, because she refused to let Emeka Nwosu cost her one more thing. She stood at the edge of the rooftop in a fitted black dress, the planner's uniform, invisible and essential, her earpiece in, her tablet in hand, her face composed into the perfect mask of competent authority. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. "Adedese, it's Chuka. I can't make it tonight. My flight from London was diverted. I'm so sorry. I'll explain everything. Please don't hate me." She read the message twice. Chuka Eze, her boyfriend of 8 months, the man she had brought specifically, exclusively to tonight's event because Emeka would be there and she had needed, with a desperation she hadn't fully admitted to herself, to not be alone in this room. She typed back, "When did you know?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "This morning. I didn't want to worry you before." She put her phone away. She would not panic in her own ballroom. She had 312 weddings in her blood. She had built this room from nothing. She would not fall apart because a man had let her down. She had survived worse. She had survived Emeka. She looked up, straightened her spine, and walked directly into Emeka Nwosu. He was standing 3 feet away with a glass of champagne and the smile she used to love, wide, warm, and she now understood, calibrated. "Adedese," his voice was everything she remembered and nothing she wanted. "This place is extraordinary. You've outdone yourself." "Thank you. Professional. Even. Is there anything you need for the ceremony?" "Just one thing." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I heard Chuka couldn't make it." She went very still. "Who told you that?" "Word travels." His smile didn't waver. "Alone again, Adedese, at my wedding?" Something flickered in his eyes, not cruelty exactly, something smaller and more calculated. "I did warn you. I told you when we ended things that you put your career above everything, that you'd always be alone because you don't know how to—" "Mr. Nwosu," a voice, male, arriving from directly behind her, carrying an accent she didn't recognize, Korean she thought, but shaped by something else, somewhere else. "I've been looking everywhere for you." She turned. The man standing behind her was tall, easily 6'2", with sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that were currently performing a perfect simulation of warmth, and the particular composure of someone very comfortable with high-stakes rooms. He was wearing a slim-fit charcoal suit that was clearly made for him specifically, and he was looking at Emeka with the relaxed authority of a man who does not need to perform confidence because he simply has it. "Ah," Emeka blinked, recalibrating. "And you are?" "Han Jae-won." The man extended his hand. His grip, from the way Emeka's expression flickered, was firm to the edge of uncomfortable. Adedese's guest. He said it simply, without embellishment, and then turned to look at her, and the look was the thing, because it was perfect, the expression of a man who has just located the person he came for. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting." Adedese's brain was performing a rapid and increasingly frantic inventory of what was happening. She had never seen this man before in her life. He was not Chuka. He was not anyone she knew. He was a stranger who had just claimed to be her guest at a wedding she had organized for 300 people. His hand found the small of her back, a light pressure, a question. "Play along." Emeka was watching them both with the specific expression of a man reprocessing information. "I didn't know you were bringing someone." "She doesn't announce everything." Jae-won's tone was pleasant and absolute. "Adedese is a private person. Surely you know that about her." The last sentence landed with a precision that was not accidental. Emeka's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Adedese made a decision. She leaned, slightly, naturally, into the hand at her back. "The florist was asking about you," she said to Emeka, her voice perfectly steady. "Something about the ceremony arch. You should probably—" "Of course." Emeka looked between them once more, then smiled tightly. "We'll catch up later." He walked away. Adedese waited until he was out of earshot. Then she turned, stepped out of reach of the hand at her back, and looked at the stranger. "Who are you?" she said quietly. "Han Jae-won," he said it the same way he'd said it to Emeka, calm, unhurried. "I'm a friend of Ola Adeyemi's. He's one of your groomsmen. I arrived late and I was standing close enough to hear what that man was saying to you." Something shifted in his expression, the pleasant performance dropping away, briefly into something more direct. "I didn't like it." She stared at him. "So you intervened?" "Yes. In my event, in my professional space. You looked like you needed—" "I am running a 300-person wedding," she said, keeping her voice low and even. "I do not need rescuing in my own ballroom, Mr. Han." He was quiet for a moment. His dark eyes held hers with an attention she found, against her will, difficult to look away from. "I was right. I overstepped. I apologize." She had been prepared for defensiveness, for justification, for the particular verbal shuffling of men who had decided their intentions excuse their actions. The clean apology landed differently than she expected. She breathed, looked away, looked back. "Thank you," she said, because she had been raised well. The thought was kind. But poorly executed? But poorly executed. The corner of her mouth moved before she could stop it. "Do you actually know Ola Adeyemi?" "Since university, Seoul National. He was there for a semester abroad, and somehow we ended up sharing a study room for 3 months. A hint of a smile. "He talks about you. He said you're the best in the business." "He's my client's groomsman. He's supposed to say that." He said it before he was a groomsman. He said it 3 years ago in Seoul when he was showing us photos of a wedding a friend of his had used this incredible planner for. He paused. He showed us a photograph of the centerpieces. "I remembered them when I saw the room tonight. I recognized your work before I recognized you." She looked at him carefully. It was either the most elaborate approach she'd ever encountered, or the most honest thing anyone had said to her in months. Her earpiece crackled. The ceremony was starting in 8 minutes. "I have to work." "Of course." She turned to go, then stopped. She did not turn back around. "The next 2 hours are going to be— Emeka will be watching. He'll be looking for—" She stopped. This was professionally humiliating. If you're going to be in this room anyway. Yes, Jaewon said, without waiting for the question. She turned then and looked at him. You don't know what I was going to ask. No, he agreed, but the answer is yes. Comment right now, where in the world are you watching from, and would you have said yes? Stay with us because this is where everything gets complicated. The ceremony was flawless. Adeyeze made it so through the sheer disciplined force of someone who refuses to let personal circumstance enter professional space. She directed caterers and coordinated lighting cues and managed a flower girl who lost a shoe mid-aisle with the calm efficiency of a general. And when she looked up from her tablet, she found Jaewon exactly where she'd placed him, at a table near the back, close enough to be visible, far enough to give her room to breathe. He looked up at precisely the same moment. She looked back down at her tablet, but Emeka was watching. She could feel it the way you feel a cold draft, not in a single point, but along the whole surface of your skin. He watched her from the head table with the expression she'd learned to read in their 3 years together. Assessment, recalibration, the working of angles. At the reception, he found her near the bar. Your date, he said, not unpleasantly. He's not really your boyfriend, is he? Adeyeze turned. Excuse me? Ola didn't mention you were seeing anyone. Ola tells me everything. Emeka smiled. Is he a paid escort? One of those services where you hire someone for... Careful, her voice dropped. You are a client, Emeka. Whatever we were to each other, tonight I am the professional who built this event, and you are the groom. Do not make me remind you of that in front of your guests. His jaw tightened, but he stepped back. She walked away on steady legs and found the nearest alcove and stood in it for 45 seconds with her eyes closed, breathing. He came back. She opened her eyes. Jaewon was standing at the edge of the alcove, not inside it, respecting the boundary of the space. He was holding 2 glasses of water. I saw him approach you, he said. I didn't want to interrupt if you were handling it. Were you handling it? Yes. She took one of the glasses. He suspects that you're not... She stopped. That I'm not what I said I was? Yes. He considered this. Does it matter if he suspects? She thought about this, about 6 months of rebuilding her professional reputation after the engagement ended and the industry, small, gossipy, interconnected, had taken sides, about the contracts that had quietly evaporated, about the specific pain of Emeka calling her emotionally unavailable, incapable of real intimacy, too married to her work, and the way those words had found every existing crack and widened them. He'll tell people, she said, that I showed up tonight with someone fake at his wedding, which I planned. It'll look desperate, Jaewon said quietly. Yes. And if it were real, if I were actually, then it would look like what it is, a woman who moved on. He turned his glass slowly in his hands, both hands. She noticed this, the deliberateness of it. I have a proposition. She looked at him. Not tonight. Tonight I am simply Ola's friend who happens to be at the same table and happens to know the woman running the event. There is nothing false about that. His eyes held hers steadily. But there is an event next weekend, my company's annual stakeholder dinner. My mother will be there. A pause. My mother has been trying to arrange my marriage for 2 years. She's flying in from Seoul with a list of candidates she considers suitable. If I arrive without, he stopped, without some evidence that I am capable of choosing for myself, the dinner will be unbearable? Yes. Adeyeze looked at him, this man she had met 40 minutes ago, who had stepped into a moment she hadn't asked for and handled it well, and who was now standing at the edge of her breathing space, offering her something she had not yet decided whether to call ridiculous or interesting. You're proposing a fake relationship, she said. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement with a clear end date. How long? 2 months. My mother goes back to Seoul after the stakeholder dinner. Then there is one family lunch she has scheduled and the opening of our new Toronto office. He paused. After that, an amicable ending. You get... Amica sees you move on fully and publicly with someone credible, and I get your mother off your back. Yes. She should say no. She was a professional who built real love for real people, and she did not deal in fiction. She was exhausted by performance. She had spent 6 months stitching herself back together, and this was precisely the kind of shortcut that people took when they were not yet fully stitched. She knew all of this. Your stakeholder dinner, she said. Is it catered? He blinked. Yes. By whom? I'd have to check. If it's chef's imperial, they will need to be replaced. Their cold starters are unacceptable for a sit-down of more than 80. She looked at him. What's the guest count? A slow, very controlled smile crossed his face. 120. I can give you a caterer, a florist, and an event coordinator who will cost less than whoever you're currently using and deliver twice the result. She held his gaze. In exchange for 2 months, clear terms, no intimacy beyond what's publicly necessary, end date agreed upon now. Agreed. And one more thing. Name it. Whatever this is, it doesn't touch my work. My professional reputation is not part of the arrangement. If at any point I determine that our association is affecting how clients perceive me, it ends immediately. Understood. He extended his hand. Terms accepted. She shook it. His grip was firm and warm, and he let go at exactly the right moment, not holding on for effect, not dropping it too fast, at exactly the right moment. She noted this. She returned to her event, but twice more that night she looked up from her tablet and found him watching, not the room, not the reception, not the spectacle she had built, her, the way a person watches something they are paying close attention to, the way you watch something that has surprised you into interest. Both times, she looked away first. The stakeholder dinner was at a private venue in Victoria Island. 120 guests. The new caterer she'd recommended, gardenias instead of the tired roses the previous florist had proposed. Araise arrived with Jaewon in a car she had coordinated, wearing a midnight blue dress that was the precise balance between personal and appropriate. Her hair swept up, her grandmother's gold at her ears. She had done this 300 times, walked into rooms that were not built for her and made them hers through sheer professional authority. She was excellent at rooms. What she was not prepared for was Mrs. Han Sung-hee. Jaewon's mother was 63 years old, small, immaculately dressed in a deep burgundy hanbok she had worn on the flight specifically for this occasion, and possessed of a quality that Araise recognized immediately because her own mother had it, the ability to see through people with a precision that required no cruelty because it was simply accurate. She took Araise's hands when they met, held them, looked at her. Jaewon didn't tell me you were this beautiful, she said in Korean. Araise answered in Korean. He didn't tell me you were this elegant. Mrs. Han's eyes went very wide. Behind Araise, she heard Jaewon make a sound she hadn't heard from him before, something between a cough and a laugh. Where did you learn? Mrs. Han started. My company does a significant number of Korean Nigerian weddings, Araise said, switching smoothly back to English. I believe if you're going to serve families, you should understand them. I've been learning for 4 years. Mrs. Han looked at her son, then back at Araise. Something in her expression shifted, the formal assessment giving way to something warmer and more complicated. Come, she said, sit with me. Don't let my son monopolize you all evening. Jaewon, beside Araise, murmured very quietly, I didn't know you spoke Korean. 4 years, she murmured back. You didn't ask. I'm asking now. You're asking now because your mother is delighted and you need to know how that happened. Is that a problem? She smiled, professional, contained. No, Sit down. Your caterer is about to serve the amuse-bouche, and I need to see if they followed my instructions about the temperature." They sat. The evening unfolded, and something about the unfolding was not what she had expected. She had expected performance, the management of a situation, two people executing an arrangement in a public setting. She had done this, not this, but adjacent to this, the professional performance of whatever a room needed 300 times. What she had not expected was Jaewon. The way he listened to his mother, not with the performative patience of a dutiful son, but with actual attention, following threads of conversation back to their origins, asking questions that showed he'd remembered things she'd said months ago. The way he introduced Araise to his business partners, not as someone to impress, but as someone worth knowing. She redesigned how our vendor selection process works. You should hear her on hospitality logistics. The way when a senior partner began a sentence with a particular setup of someone about to say something reductive about what Araise did for a living, Jaewon completed it for him in a direction that made the reductive thing impossible. Not obviously, not performatively, just blocked it smoothly and without drama. She noticed. During the dinner, beneath the table, his hand found hers briefly, a slight pressure. He was leaning toward his mother, engaged in a conversation in Korean, and the hand-holding was for the room, for the performance. She understood this, but the pressure lasted 3 seconds longer than the room required. She didn't pull away. His mother, departing late in the evening, took Araise's hands again. "Come to lunch on Sunday," she said. It was not a question. "Both of you. I want to hear about the 4 years of learning." In the car afterwards, they sat in the particular silence of people who have just spent 3 hours performing and are now recalibrating. "You could have told me about the Korean," he said finally. "You didn't ask." "You're my—" He stopped. "My what?" she said, quiet, not challenging, genuinely asking. "Your arrangement," he said. The word landed flatly. He looked out the window at Legos sliding past. She looked at his profile. "Why?" He turned. "I'm paying attention to you, and I'd like the things I learn to be real, not surprises arranged for effect." She held his gaze. "That's a strange thing to want from an arrangement." "Yes, it is." The car stopped outside her building. She got out. He walked her to the entrance, not because the performance required it, because there was no audience, because he did. "Sunday lunch?" she said at the door. "My mother won't take no." "I wasn't going to say no." She paused. I liked her. Something in his face opened slightly. "She liked you. That doesn't—" He stopped. "That doesn't happen easily." "I know. I could tell." She looked at him. "Jaewon." "Yes?" "Thank you for tonight. The way you—" She stopped, looking for the precise language. When Kelechi started his sentence about event planning being I heard it before he finished it. "Yes, thank you for—" "You don't have to thank me for that." His voice was very direct. "That was not the arrangement. That was just—" He paused. "That was just what you do when someone says something untrue about someone who is standing in front of you." She looked at him for a moment. "Good night, Jaewon." "Good night." She went inside. She did not check if he waited. She did not look back. She was very careful not to look back. The Sunday lunch was at a restaurant in Ikoyi, one of those quiet places that existed outside the city's noise, all wooden walls and garden views and food that tasted like someone had made it for people they loved. Mrs. Han asked Adaeze about the 4 years of Korean. Adaeze told her. The Korean Nigerian weddings, the first wedding where she couldn't understand the grandmother's speech and had to watch the family laugh and cry around an absence of meaning, the decision afterward to change that, the private tutor, the textbooks, the apps at 5 a.m. before events. Mrs. Han listened with the expression of someone receiving an unexpected gift. "Most people," she said quietly in Korean, "learn enough to be polite. You learned enough to understand. Understanding is the point of all of it, My whole work is about understanding what people actually need for the most important day of their lives. If I can't understand them—" She stopped. "I'm failing them." Mrs. Han looked at her son. Her expression was complicated and clear at the same time, the expression of a mother recognizing something she had been hoping for. Jae-won was watching Adaeze. He had been watching her since the restaurant, not the way men watch women when they want something, the way you watch something you're trying to understand fully before you trust yourself to speak about it. After lunch, while his mother was saying goodbye to the restaurant's owner, who turned out to be a distant connection through a church in Seoul, they stood in the garden. "You meant it," he said, "what you said to her, about understanding being the point." "Yes, that's not about weddings." She looked at him. "No, it's not." He was quiet. "My father died 4 years ago. The company, everything he built, came to me in a state I hadn't anticipated. The scale of it, the complications." He turned his water glass in his hands, both hands, always both hands. She had mapped this habit across a dozen interactions. "I've spent 4 years doing what needed to be done without much room," she said quietly. "Yes, room, for anything that wasn't the company." He looked at her. "I agreed to my mother's matchmaking because she was grieving too, and it seemed kind. I never intended to actually—" He stopped. "To actually let anyone in." "Yes." She looked at the garden, at the late afternoon light moving through leaves, at the particular stillness of a moment that was deciding what it was going to be. "I run a wedding planning company. I have built 312 ceremonies around the idea that love is possible and worth building. I believe that. I have believed it through a broken engagement and a very bad 6 months and a wedding I planned for the man who broke it." She paused. "I also have very good professional reasons not to blur this particular line." "I know. We have a contract, an arrangement with a clear end date." "I know. This is not—" She stopped. "What is this, Jae-won? Say it clearly." He turned to face her. The afternoon light was behind him. His face was very open, more open than she'd seen it, the composure reduced to something simpler and more vulnerable. "I stopped pretending this was an arrangement somewhere around the 3rd time you said something that made me see something I hadn't seen before." His voice was even, but the evenness was costing him something. "I don't know exactly when. The Korean, maybe. Or the way you handled the dinner as if it was yours to handle. Or—" He stopped. "The way you thanked me for something I didn't do for the arrangement. You said thank you for that, and what I felt was not relief that the performance had landed. It was—" "Don't," she said softly. He stopped. "Don't say it yet. Not here. Not with your mother 30 feet away and a contract between us." She looked at him carefully. The professional part of her, the part that had built a life on reading what rooms needed, was watching him with the specific attention she gave to things that mattered. What she saw was not performance. What she saw was a man standing still inside something he hadn't planned for. 2 more weeks. The Toronto opening. After that, when the arrangement is finished, then say it. Something moved through his expression, restraint and something warmer than restraint. 2 more weeks, he said. "And if it's still true then—" She held his gaze. "Then we have a different conversation. Drop a comment right now. Are you still breathing? Hit subscribe because we are not done." The Toronto office opening was a rooftop event at a Yorkville venue, all glass and the November city spread below like scattered lights. Adaeze had not planned this one. It was Jae-won's company's event, managed by an in-house team, but she could see, with the professional eye she couldn't turn off, exactly where the lighting fell wrong and which table arrangement was going to create a traffic bottleneck near the bar. She said nothing. This was not her room to fix. But she watched Jae-won move through it, greeting investors, managing his board, the particular navigation of a man who has built something and is now carefully, publicly solidifying it into legitimacy. There were men in that room who had known his father, who carried the old era of Jae-won's family business in their handshakes and their silences. She had learned enough in 2 months to read them. One of them found her at the balcony railing, older, expansive, the expensive casualness of a man who was never needed to perform wealth because he has always simply had it. He introduced himself as Director Choi, an old business partner of the family, a board observer. "You're his girlfriend," Choi said. Not a question. Yes. Still clean. 2 weeks later, this was still technically within the arrangement. Choi looked at her. "He's changed since you." His tone was not warm exactly, but it was honest. In our world, that is not always seen as a good thing. "In my experience," Adiaze said, "the people who are threatened by someone changing are the people who benefited from who they were." A silence. "He's making this company into something his father wouldn't recognize," Choi said. "Good." Choi's eyes narrowed slightly. Then something shifted, the faintest recalibration. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Adiaze asked. "Someone decorative." He paused. "Someone who was here for what he has." "I run my own company," she said pleasantly. "I've built it from nothing over 8 years. I'm here because of who he is." She held the older man's gaze with the calm directness she had developed across 300 events that required her to hold her ground in rooms that underestimated her. "Is there something you needed, Director Choi?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then, almost despite himself, he smiled. "No," he said. "I suppose not." He moved away. Jae-won appeared at her side 30 seconds later. What did he want? "To measure me." She picked up her drink. "I think I passed." He looked at her with the expression she had stopped pretending not to know, the one that lived behind everything else he showed the room. "Are you all right?" "I'm extraordinary," she said. "Dry, light, true." His mouth curved. "Yes," he said, "you are." The event wound down late. The last guests departed. The in-house team began the breakdown. Adiaze stood at the railing with the city of Toronto below and felt, for the first time in 8 years of working events, the odd sensation of not being the one responsible for the room. Jae-won stood beside her. "The arrangement ends tonight," he said quietly. "Yes." The city, the cold air, the railing under her hands. "It's been 2 weeks since the garden." "I know." "I said I'd wait." "You did." She heard him turn toward her. She didn't turn. "Adiaze." "Yes." "I have been building something for 4 years, restructuring a company, trying to do it right, trying to make it into something I can stand behind. I've been very focused. I didn't expect." "Neither did I." She said it to the city, to the lights. "You told me to wait. I waited. The arrangement is finished." His voice was direct and very quiet. "So I'm asking you now, not as part of anything with terms or end dates, just asking." She turned. He was close, closer than the arrangement required now that the arrangement was over. His face was open in the way she had seen only in unguarded moments, in the car back from Lagos, in the garden, in the space between performances when he forgot to manage his expression. "You've built 300 weddings. You know what love looks like, what it requires. You've designed its architecture more times than most people witness it." He held her gaze. "Do you believe in it for yourself?" She was quiet for a moment, honest with herself in the way she was very good at being honest with herself when nobody was watching. "I stopped believing in it for about 6 months after Emeka. I told myself the stories I told my clients were true for other people, that I was better at building it than receiving it. I don't think that anymore." "What changed it?" "You put your hand on my back in a ballroom when I was standing in something difficult, and then you apologized for overstepping, and then you gave me water. She looked at him steadily. The water was what did it. He blinked. The water? You noticed I needed water, not wine, not champagne, water when everything felt like too much. She paused. The grand gestures are easy to perform. The small ones, the water at the right moment, those are the ones that are actually true. He was very still. I have been falling for you, she said, with the careful precision of someone for whom language is a professional and personal commitment. I have been trying not to for 8 weeks because we had an arrangement and I'm a professional and I do not, she stopped. I do not fall in the middle of things I've contracted. The contract is finished, he said. Yes. So, yes, she said. Jinho, Jaewon, yes. She stepped forward, closed the last of the distance. He kissed her with the same quality she had identified in everything he did, unhurried, fully present, the specific attention of a man who is not already thinking about what comes next. His hands were at her face, cupping it, and she felt, for the first time since the ring came off and the career nearly went with it, and she'd spent 6 months stitching herself back into someone who didn't need anything, she felt seen. Completely and without remainder, seen. When they broke apart, the city was still there, the light still spread below, the November cold still pressed against the glass. There is something I need to tell you, he said. She looked at him. Tell me. The stakeholder dinner, the real reason I proposed the arrangement. My board was pressuring me to formalize a partnership with a family my father had done business with, an old arrangement that I have been trying to end. The dinner was partially, the arrangement was also to make clear to certain people that I was building my own life, making my own choices, that I was not available to be maneuvered. He paused. You were in part a message. She was quiet. You were a message, he said. I should have told you that. I told myself it was a separate matter. It wasn't. It involved you, and you had the right to know. She looked at him for a long moment, processing. The professional in her understood. Messages were sent through presence, through choices, through what you stood beside in public rooms. She had sent them herself. The personal in her, the part that had been used before, positioned before, stood in as a pawn before. Did it work? She asked. What? The message. Did it land? Yes, the partnership discussion was dropped the week after the dinner. She looked at the city. The arrangement served both of us, she said finally. We both had things we needed from it. I needed a Mecca to see that I'd moved on. You needed your board to see that you were your own person. She turned back to him. That's not manipulation. That's two people with overlapping needs making an agreement. She paused. What I need from you going forward is not the absence of strategy. I understand strategy. I deal in it professionally. Her eyes held him. What I need is what you gave me just now, the true thing, before I have to find it myself. Always, he said. That's, yes, always. She looked at him for one more moment, then she nodded once, with the decisiveness of someone who has made a decision and is done reconsidering it. I'm hungry, she said, and this event's caterer was adequate but not exceptional. Find me somewhere real. The smile that crossed his face was the real one, the chest-deep, unguarded one she had been cataloging for 2 months and could now finally admit she loved. I know a place, he said. It had better have good jollof, she said. It has the best jollof in Toronto. Bold claim. I researched it, he said, 3 weeks ago when I was trying not to think about the fact that the arrangement was ending. She looked at him, at the city, at all the lights. Let's go, she said. 6 months later, Adiaze received an inquiry. A bride from Abuja, a groom from Busan, a wedding they wanted to hold in Lagos with ceremonies for both families, 2 traditions woven into one day without erasing either. She took the contract. She spent 4 weeks on the design, the deep-dyed adire patterns echoing the geometric precision of the Korean pojagi wrapping cloth, the color palette moving from the burnt orange of Nigerian sunset to the celadon green of traditional Korean ceramics. The food combining jollof and japchae and smoked fish and tteok in a way that tasted like belonging. Jae-won watched her work. He had learned in 6 months what her concentration looked like and when to bring water and when to simply be present in the same room without demanding any of her attention. He had learned the difference, as she had told him once, between filling her space and sharing it. On the night of the wedding, the 313th, the one she cried at, standing at the back of the room she'd built while 2 families braided themselves together in front of her, he found her. He didn't say anything. He handed her a handkerchief, actual cloth, actual thought, and stood beside her and watched the first dance with the expression of a man who was looking at something and understanding it for the first time. "This is what you build," he said quietly, "every time." "Yes." "How do you not—" He stopped. Tried again. "Are you—" She said clearly, because she was a person for whom precision mattered, that what began as an arrangement is the truest thing that's happened to me in a long time, and I would like to stop calling it anything less than what it is. He reached for her hand. She gave it to him. On the dance floor, the 313th couple turned inside their first dance. Behind them, holding hands at the edge of the room, the wedding planner and the man who had put his hand on her back in a ballroom on the night everything changed did not dance. They didn't need to. The music knew. The room knew. Some stories don't announce themselves. They begin with a stranger's hand and a whispered "I've got you," and they build, quietly and without permission, into the one thing all the planning in the world cannot manufacture. Something real. If you watched until the very last word, you are exactly who this story was made for. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, drop in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Because Adeeze and Jae-won's story is just the beginning of what we're building here. Come back for the next one. We promise it's worth the wait.